Greetings, fellow geeks, and welcome back to another episode of Geeks Like Me with me, your host, Drake Redvoss. Joining us today, we have the guy behind Geek XP and the co-organizer of Icon, Les Allen. Les, welcome back to Geeks Like Me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Now, you're pretty well known in the geek community and the geek culture.
I don't know why.
I do. Because of all your involvement.
Yes.
All the stuffs you do.
The stuffs I do.
But where did the whole geek thing start for you?
For me, comics. Probably about age 9, age 10. That was when I was introduced to X-Men. And it was probably around about the age of 11 that I walked into my first actual comic store, which then took the comic experience to another level, because now it's not just picking them up from a newsstand or a CMA or something like that. Now they come in bags and they have backing boards and you can order them and there are hundreds of them, and this is amazing. And that's where it started. I've always been a big reader of fantasy, sci-fi, and comics was the natural extension. So that's where it started for me.
Cool. X-Men.
Yes.
Me too.
Yeah,
X-Men.
I love my X-Men.
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, you're the guy behind Geek XP.
Yes.
Now, for the guys who don't know what Geek XP is, can you give us a little bit about a background of it?
Sure.
And how it started?
An interesting note about the origin, and it would be mostly for South African viewers that understood the word. It actually almost started as a Stockfell idea. I, in my work life, managed to get to a point where if I wanted to go to San Diego Comic Con or Gen Con or to any of the big convention overseas, I could. That was just through the work that I was able to do and the connections I'd made. And I realized that a lot of my geek friends in South Africa, for a lot of them, that sort of experience was never going to be possible, or it might just be too far out of reach. So the idea was that I was actually going to start selling a raffle tickets. That, hey, you know what, everybody just buy a raffle ticket, and we've got the connections that we can get somebody to Gen Con, we can get somebody to San Diego. And we spoke to the gambling council, and they said no, because that sort of raffle with that sort of prize money would be illegal. So I spoke to a legal friend of mine, and he said, well, do it rather as like a voucher system, where people buy vouchers and they can trade them in. So there was a way around it all. But that was where the idea started, that I wanted to get people, geeks in South Africa, to start getting access to experiences that they wouldn't normally have access to. I've been to conventions around the world. I've been to Supernova in Australia. I've competed at world champ levels in some collectible card games. And I've been able to go over and meet people and have good times with famous people, go drinking and stuff like that. So it was a case of, this is really cool, but let's rather see if we can't develop a system and a promotions idea to help get other geeks in South Africa access to experiences, access to cool stuff that they've never seen before, or that they wouldn't normally have a chance to get to.
So you're also very involved at the Nexus.
Yes.
Yeah. What exactly is the, I don't want to say field of expertise, but you know, like everybody has their thing. Like Grant has his thing, Tex has his thing. What is your involvement at the Nexus?
I'm assisting with events and some media aspects. Part of the work that I used to do, well, still do sometimes, is in relation to social media analytics and social media promotions and event promotions. So I'm working with the Nexus to get people into some of our experience rooms. They rent the room for occasions. We helped bring the Hearthstone summer qualifiers to Nexus last weekend. So I'm part of the team that's looking to get more of the event space and the event activities at the Nexus, which naturally ties into Icon a little bit as well, because that's just one big event. And so it's the managing the herding of the cats in that regard. That's how I'm associated with Nexus.
Okay, cool. Now you have your own podcast.
I do.
As well, called Release the Geek?
Release the Geek.
Release the Geek. Tell us a little bit about that.
I'll give the game away here, actually, a little bit. The whole idea behind Release the Geek was so that I could chat to famous people. That's it. There's a fine line between being a stalker and just a mad fan and saying, hey, I'd like to spend an hour with you where we just talk like you and me, right? Can we just talk for an hour? No, that's creepy. But if you email somebody and actually say, hi, I have a podcast, and it's got a listenership, it's got an audience, and I'd like to talk to you about cool things, would that be okay? That is completely different to just being a mad stalker, where you want to try and do that. So the reason, the actual impetus started with a podcast I was listening to a Nerdist episode with, it was actually Henry Rollins. Mm-hmm. And Rollins told a story about a concert that he was at with Iggy Pop. And it was the most insane story. And the way he strung it out, it was fantastic. I'm listening to this in my car going, I want to be on the other side of that conversation. I want to be the person being part of that conversation. Yeah. Can I do that? Well, you can pick up a couple of microphones and some recording equipment, and you can totally do it. So then, that was the idea. Reached out to a couple of people. Turns out a friend of mine was a sound engineer, and I didn't even know that at the time. I said, I'm going to start a podcast. And he said, I would like to help. What do you do? Sound engineer. Okay, well, let's do that. So thank you, Frank. And then it was a case of developing the idea of, I want to have a conversation. Yeah. The best conversations come from topics that are authentic. So rather than just sitting down and asking somebody, so you're in this new movie or you're in this, and you get the standard cookie cutter responses, let's sit down and talk about what you geek out about. What is it that you find interesting? We did a podcast with John Flismus, the comedian. And I said, so John, what do you geek out about? Expecting the answer to be comedy. And his response was art and technology, which skewed the entire conversation off into ways where we were talking about would he use bionics and cybernetics to assess the heartbeat of a crowd to know when to deliver the next line. It just opened up these amazing different conversations. The first time I interviewed Raymond Feist, we talked sport. He's a mad keen sports guy. So we were talking early NFL, we were talking Australian rules football because he likes one of the Australian teams. So that was it. It was, I want a legitimate way that I could speak to famous people. Start a podcast. And now we're just about to start our 4th year of podcasts. And I've been able to interview some amazing comic names, Ron Mars, Brian Haviland, guys like that, and amazing people in the industry, and just have this really authentic conversation. So there's not really a script there. It's, what do you geek out about? And let's take it from there.
Which brings me to pretty much my next question.
Sure.
What do you geek out about? Because, I mean, you get your mainstream geeks, you know, the guys, they go to the con, they buy 1 or 2 things, you know, it's nice to be there. And then you get your hardcore geeks, you know, the guys who read the comics, they play the tabletop gaming, they LARP, and you pretty much do all of that. What is your favorite geek out?
It's this, I'm going to take a slight digression to get to the answer. There, and I don't know why this is the thought that triggered. There was a comment that Richard Gere once made. He was being interviewed by Oprah, and she said, so what becomes more important to you as you get older? And he said, what becomes less important to you as you get older? And he said, I do. She said, what becomes more important? He said, all of you. I was very much a hardcore canon guy when I in my geekdom. So when the X-Men movie was coming out, I kind of had to realize, look, they're not going to take 35 years of this thing that you love and do it justice in a 90-minute film. You're not going to be able to compress that. You're not going to be able to do it. Before that, I was very much, no, this is canon. This is not canon. This cannot be done. So that the movies coming out kind of had to make me realize that there are other ways of telling these stories. So rather than now being hardcore canon, hardcore rules, which has its place, you've got to have a rule set. But now, I'm now standing above and going, I'm just going to enjoy this. When people say Marvel versus DC, I'm a Marvel guy, I grew up reading Marvel comics, but holy crap, we can see some amazing stuff. Some of the stuff from the new Justice League movie looks amazing. So why? Why does there need to be these things? What I now geek out about is the enjoy and watching the joy that other geeks have. It's something that I can relate to. If I can help facilitate that, seeing it at Icon, especially last year with Raymond Feist, And this year with some of the guests that we brought out James Sutter and Linda Lee. But especially last year, Raymond's such an amazing guest that he will spend time talking to people. And now all of a sudden, the South African community who have read Magician, most of the geek group in South Africa has read Magician. But now they've got this chance to interact and they get this buzz that I got the first time I interviewed the guy. And the second time I got to interview the guy, I said, I got to interview Raymond Price, the guy who wrote this book. Oh my God. What I now geek out about is the experiential aspect and the recognition that your experience really doesn't matter what you're interested in. If it's Starfinder, if it's D&D, if it's online games, if it's fantasy, art, whatever. If you're extracting this same joy, that's something that's so easily recognizable by somebody who experiences the same joy in a different genre. So now, that's what I geek out about. I geek out about seeing other people enjoying the stuff, which is why a place like Nexus is so cool. When you see people come in and go, this is like nerd heaven. You go, yeah, it is. The Nexus team have put this amazing place together to be this like nerd nirvana, this oasis in the middle of Johannesburg, where you can come I can geek out and nerd out about the stuff that I want to. That's what I tend to geek out about now. So it's possibly not the answer that you wanted, but that's now the answer.
No, it's a perfect answer. To follow up on that, like the reason I started the YouTube channel is exactly that. So over the past couple of years, the geek community as a whole, the geek culture has kind of like started like really blossoming from where it was like,
becoming more mainstream.
More mainstream, and there's more people going, oh, this exists. Oh, this exists. Oh, there's cons. Oh, there's actually a shop where I can buy all these things. It's becoming bigger. Now I have my own personal like vision and dream of what geek culture in South Africa is, but what is yours? Yeah, what would your dream and vision be of what geek culture in South Africa can become, and you could possibly help facilitate that in many ways?
Inclusion. And this is going to sound like really airy-fairy and ephemeral and more happy true friends type thing, which is not. It's completely not. If you've ever seen the cartoon,
it's beautiful.
There's always been a history. There's no matter where you go. The early cons that I went to in Australia, if you're a tabletop gamer, you look down on the card players, you look down on the Magic players. The Magic players look down on the LARPers. The LARPers look down on this. Everybody, it doesn't matter what type of aspect of the community there is, there's always alpha dog status. The person who's played the oldest game, well, I played first box Dungeons and Dragons. Well, I played this. Well, I have the rules set for it. Yeah. The recognition that everybody just has their own interest, and it doesn't really matter what that interest is, that there's acceptance and inclusion. If you like this thing, like it, and enjoy it. And there shouldn't be a derision, because from older geeks, people who grew up in like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, that there was always a stigma of being a geek. You're reading comics. You're 16 years old. Why the hell are you reading comics? Grow up. That line, you could replace comics with any geek interest. And a lot of the people viewing will know, I know exactly what you're talking about. This happened to me, this happened to me. And it's so easy for us to forget about that when we find a group and we find acceptance. Now, that sort of derision isn't always there. It's still around. But sometimes it happens from one geek group to another geek group. Cosplayers, oh, they're also drama. LARPers, why do you run around in front? It still happens. What I would like to see from any geek community is the recognition that this is a community and it's supporting. There's nothing like the feeling of feeling that you are alone in an interest and then finding that there's a whole bunch of other people that feel exactly the way that you do. That's what fandom is, that you can connect with all of these other people, whether you're a Potter fan, whether you're a Star Wars geek, whether you're a Trekkie, whatever. The reaching out and finding other people that you can now share this deep and abiding love of something. What I want to see is that the community keeps recognizing that it is a community, that it is friendships. It's everybody respecting and taking part of the fact that they love something so much that you're willing to get tattooed, that you're willing to spend thousands of hours on cosplay, that you'll read all of the technical manuals so you'll know exactly how the Millennium Falcon works, and understanding why doing the Kessel Run in 12 parsecs could make somebody 120 years older. All of that sort of stuff. That there's these amazing things in this community, but rather just remember it's a community. Remember it's fun, and be inclusive, and don't deny anybody their fandom. Don't deny anybody their love. So as these things become more popular, recognizing that mainstream is taking it because mainstream tends to see that there's money, and money lends credibility. Just the recognition, we're still community. We do these things because we love them, and that's what we should be sharing and helping to support everybody do.
I can't agree more. Like, that is awesome. Les, once again, thank you for joining us, and all the best of luck with all the future plans that you guys have.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for having me back.